Now, Cal Thomas, syndicated columnist, a Fox News contributor, David Mercer, former Democratic National Committee finance director. Gentlemen, I know you both off the air. Good to have you on the air.
Thanks, Ed.
Good to be with you, Ed.
David, I want to start with you because we got a little video clip from the 2008 campaign I wanted you to hear.
This is part of the whole theory of George Bush, that he can make laws as he's going along. I disagree with that. I taught the Constitution for 10 years. I believe in the Constitution, and I will obey the Constitution of the United States. We're not going to use signing statements as a way of doing an end run around Congress.
David, not so much?
Not so much. And if you look at the history, dating back to Hoover, Roosevelt, Nixon, Ford, Kennedy, and the Bushes, and Reagan in particular, on average, the presidents have had about 610 executive orders. This president, President Obama, has only had 143 executive orders. So if his presidency is going to be labeled imperial, then we're talking about a royal imperial presidency of those past. And I don't think that's the case in either instance.
Cal, what do you say to that? If you look at the numbers, there were more executive actions in both the Bush and Clinton administrations than we've seen in the Obama administration.
But Ed, he said he had taught constitutional law for 10 years, and he suggested he wasn't going to do that at all, and he was going to work with Congress. Also in that same speech, in a clip you didn't run, he also said that the debt under President Bush was an indication of failed leadership. Now, the debt under President Obama has expanded greatly. So if it was failed leadership under President Bush, what is it under President Obama? It's Alice in Wonderland here in Washington, Ed. The words mean only what I mean them to mean at a certain time.
David, what do you say to that? The other big news this week, among other pieces, we can go through several of them, but the president, last year's budget, had some changes to Social Security. 2008 campaign, as Cal says, he talked about bringing down the debt. He also talked about major entitlement reform. Now, all of a sudden, and admittedly, there have been Republican obstacles to many pieces of his agenda, but it looks like he's not tackling entitlement reform anymore. What happened?
What happened is, as was referenced indirectly by Cal, is the president hoped for a Congress that he could work with and a GOP party that he could work with to do on behalf of the American people what the American people want, whether that's raising the minimum wage, whether that's extending the unemployment benefits, whether it's creating more jobs beyond the 8 million that he has created. And if he is, what the president believes is that if, one's inaction does not beget another's inaction. And while Congress may want to sit on its hands while we are trying to strengthen the recovery, the president is going to take the action that he can and set an example. If you're looking to raise the minimum wage, let's start with the federal contractors raising the minimum wage as he has done through an executive order in making sure that people have a livable wage and not one that puts them on food stamps.
I want Cal to be able to respond to that, but I also want to read a little bit more of Eric Cantor's memo so we can push forward beyond just the back and forth. He talked a bit about health care and what the Republicans, some of their next moves on that. I think we've got a little graphic on that where he talked about these Medicare Advantage cuts we've learned about in the last 24 hours, proposed changes to Medicare prescription drug, that program. These are going to be the next targets for Republicans, the fact that these cuts are coming into place. And Eric Cantor said delaying the employer mandate while continuing to force American families to work through a broken system to purchase insurance, that is too expensive and often doesn't meet their needs or pay a brand new tax equal to up to 1% of their income. He's saying this is not fair. The Republicans have had a lot of these votes before to try to repeal the law, defund the law. Is it a waste of time, or are they going to finally get somewhere in terms of actually changing, reshaping this law?
Well, they're not going to reshape or change anything yet, as you know, until the election. This is all about setting the table for the November election. Republicans want to counter the Democrats' charge that they don't have an alternative to Obamacare. Nobody's seen their plan. But one quick point about David just made. The president did have a united Congress under the Democrats. He could have done entitlement reform. President Bush tried to do entitlement reform, and he was slammed by the Democrats. He was going to starve old people. He was going to put people in the streets. He was going to increase the homeless population. So So this is why people hate politics in Washington. Nothing ever gets done. People throw charges back and forth at each other, and the public suffers. Imagine a Republican president trying to cut back spending on Medicare Advantage. My goodness, the major media would be screaming and yelling, and Democrats would be calling for his impeachment.
David, I'm going to give you 30 seconds here. What about those Medicare Advantage cuts? It's not just Republicans complaining. There's a letter circulating with all these Senate Democrats whose butts are on the line in November saying, Mr. President, what are you doing?
Well, I'll say that with regard to Cal's statement just now, that a lot's been done. And in fact, Affordable Care Act has been done, providing millions of people with access to insurance that they otherwise didn't have. And with regard to the employer's mandate, you know, that is not the crux of the Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. It's those that do not have insurance through their employees or employers. And so we're seeking to address those that, as on an individual basis, don't have insurance, and that has gotten done. And it took 50 years for an Affordable Care Act to get done, and that's action, and that is what record will stand on going into the November elections.
One thing I want to agree on is something Cal said, that things have gotten pretty disagreeable, but we're lucky to have two gentlemen who are quite agreeable. Thanks for coming in.
Ed, you're doing a great job. You may have a future
you.
in this business.
All right, I might have. All right. Is that just because I said something nice about you, Cal? Cal Thomas, David Mercer, we appreciate it, Arthur.
Have a good weekend.
Cal's a smart man.